Hey there. So, if you're working in tech, you know the feeling, right? Juggling a different login for AWS, another for Azure, and yet another for Google Cloud, it gets messy fast. Well, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to talk about how to tame that multi-cloud maze using federated identity.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll dive right into that identity maze and why it's such a headache. Then, I'll introduce you to federation, which is kind of like your own digital passport. We'll look at how that trust gets built, how it translates into actual access, and then we'll wrap up by navigating some of the common pitfalls to watch out for. It's a pretty clear path from total chaos to real control. So let's paint a picture. You're a developer, maybe an IT pro, and your company is going all in on multi-cloud. And on paper, that's awesome. But behind the curtain, it can be a real nightmare of just way too many keys.
And let's make this personal for a second. Just think about it. One single user, you. You need into AWS for some S3 buckets. You need into Azure for an app. And you need into GCP for BigQuery. Right there, how many separate usernames and passwords is that? Now multiply that by 100 people, or 1,000. You see where this is going.
This is the chaos that just explodes from that simple problem. You get password fatigue, and you know what that means. People start reusing weak passwords everywhere just to keep their sanity. For your security team, it creates these huge security blind spots. I mean, who has access to what? Did we remember to deprovision Bob when he left the company? Bringing a new person onto the team becomes this clunky, multi-step chore, and the admin overhead, just the day-to-day grind of resetting passwords and tweaking permissions, becomes a massive time suck. So, how do we get out of this mess? Well, the answer is federated identity. And the best way to think about it, honestly, is as your own digital passport. It's this simple, powerful idea of one identity to rule them all.
So let's get specific. What we're talking about here is a system that lets you use a single trusted set of credentials to get into multiple completely separate systems, like AWS and Azure, without having to log into each one over and over again.
And the analogy that makes this all click is this one. Just imagine your main identity system, something like Okta or Microsoft's Entra ID, as your official passport agency. It's the one place, the single source of truth that issues your credentials and verifies that you are who you say you are.
And the difference this makes, it's just night and day. In the before world, you're trying to manage all these messy individual lines to every single cloud. In the after world, you just log in once to your passport agency, and it handles all the secure handshakes to the other clouds for you. It's clean, it's simple, and it is so much more secure.
Okay, but how does this magic actually work? Before a cloud provider like AWS is just going to accept your digital passport, it first has to trust your passport agency. And that trust is established through a process I like to call the digital handshake.
It's really just a simple three-step dance. First, you go into your cloud provider and tell it about your identity provider. Second, you do the exact opposite. You tell your identity provider about the cloud. And finally, they exchange some digital certificates and metadata to secure their line of communication. It's a one-time setup, and from then on, they trust each other.
All right, so the trust is built. Your passport is official. But think about it. Just having a passport doesn't mean you can just waltz into another country and do whatever you want, right? You might need a visa for a specific purpose, and that's exactly how this works too. So when you log in, your identity provider sends this secure little packet of data. It's often a SAML assertion or an OIDC token over to the cloud provider. We call this a claim. Think of the claim as your actual digital passport. It's got verified info about you, your name, your email, which department you're in. It proves who you are.
But knowing who you are is only step one. The cloud provider takes that passport and then looks to see what role it can give you. The role, that's your visa. It's a specific set of permissions that says exactly what you're allowed to do. Can you read from a database? Can you write to a storage bucket? Or can you just look at the billing dashboard? The role is what turns your identity into actual permissions.
And here's where it gets really powerful. Inside your identity provider, you can set up groups. So, for example, if you're in the finance team group, you can be automatically mapped to the Azure billing reader role. No questions asked. If you're in the developers group, maybe you get AWS S3 read/write access. It makes managing permissions for hundreds of people incredibly efficient.
Now, as amazing as all this is, and trust me, it is, it's not totally foolproof. There's always some turbulence to navigate. So let's talk about a few of the most common pitfalls you really need to watch out for.
First on the list, zombie certificates. That digital handshake we talked about, it relies on certificates that expire. If one does, trust is broken, and everyone can get locked out. so you have to stay on top of those renewal dates. Next, rollover privileging. This is a big one. It's so tempting to just give someone admin access to get something working, but you have to resist. Always use the principle of least privilege. Then there's messy claim rules. If your user data isn't consistent, the whole system breaks down. And finally, lockout scenarios. What happens if your main identity provider goes down? You absolutely need a break glass local admin account just in case.
So here's the bottom line, the most crucial thing to take away from all this. Federation is incredibly powerful because it centralizes all your user control. But that also means it centralizes your risk. That one central identity provider becomes the keys to the entire kingdom, which means protecting it has to be your #1 security priority.
And that really leaves us with one final important thought. By setting up Federation, you've gotten rid of all those little side doors and windows. You've unified everything into a single front door. So the question you have to ask yourself now is, how strong is your new lock?